Arch Advocate Show for Monday. It's the first Monday of the month of December. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for hitting subscribe. Thank you for telling your friends, putting it on your Twitter, putting it on your Facebook, telling your friends at the coffee shop, hey man, the Arch Advocate Show is legit. Thank you guys so much for that. And today is a day that I like to call Patreon Payday. Right, the charges on Patreon get charged on the first business day of the month. So I want to take a second and thank all of the patrons. Seriously, could not like at this point with the new baby and everything. Like it was hard before, but seriously, like this show is not happening without you. So all of you guys, Todd, Nelly, Ian. Well, Ian does PayPal, but all you guys. Dan Morin, Professor Morin, thank you so much. Like, literally, the show is happening because of you. Support the things that you like, people. And we are living in very strange times, and that's really what this show is about, right? Like, from cryptocurrencies to the riots in France, and Angela Merkel trying to build a new military out of the European Union, and you got Congress people talking about writing new gun laws that would make it illegal for you to have a gun in your home, and California is actually running public service announcements to teach children to take their parents' weapons, take their parents' guns, take them to school and turn them in to their teachers. What could possibly go wrong with a child walking around with a perhaps loaded, perhaps not weapon in a schoolyard? What could possibly go wrong with that scenario? Like it's there's so many things going on where it's just like I don't know if I'm on the right planet here, because it seemed like just a few years ago, maybe 20, maybe 50, maybe 100 years ago, it just seems like people used to do things that made sense. But I don't know, if you really go through history, I guess there's really never been a time where people did things that made sense. Gonna talk a little bit. There's a I guess you'd call it a poem. It's not really a poem, but it was written by Paul Harvey and spoken by Paul Harvey, and it's called "If I Were the Devil." And I'm gonna read this to you here in just a little bit, but just it's if you are feeling it too, you are not alone. You're not alone. You have to remember that. Like you, as you're looking around going, what, I don't know why these people are acting this way. And it's not even, like, look, there's this, there was a discussion recently, I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about alpha males versus beta males. And then somebody brought up, I can't remember how it went, but somebody brought up, it's like, well, those aren't the only two types of people, right? An alpha is like a go-getter, somebody that's, perhaps tends toward brutality because they just see like this is life and I have to get through it and I've got to protect myself, I've got to protect my family, whatever. And then there's a beta male who's like just a sissy, a pushover, gets attacked by the alpha male. But there's actually other types. There's not just alpha and beta. Like there's other types. There's people like me who's like, I'm neither of those two things. Right? Like I think you ought to live your life, do your own thing. You come messing around with me, I will be very quick to end any sort of conflict. That you know what I mean? Like I just don't want conflict around me. I don't like it, and I will end it as quickly as I can because I don't like it. But I don't go looking for it either. You know what I mean? So it's. And I can't remember what the Greek letter was for it. It wasn't alpha, it wasn't beta, and I think it was like omega. It's like somebody that just like when I see Angela Merkel talking about, oh, we're gonna create a new European Union military to protect ourselves from the evil United States. It's like, I mean, I get a little upset about that, but mostly I just look at it and I just think to myself like why are you doing that? How is it that you don't see that this is going to go horribly wrong for you? Germany has taken over the world 3 times now. right? They took over Europe, and by the world, I mean like Europe, because Europe is connected to everything else, right? They took over Europe in World War One. They took over Europe in World War Two, and now they've done it again with the European Union. That's a hat trick. That's 3 times. And it's like, hey, Germany, like, listen, we've kicked your ass now twice. You have revealed yourselves to be like one of the most brutal people on the planet when you get in that mood. And both times that you've done it before, we've had to come over there and curb stomp you and humiliate you and remove your national pride from you because you're not responsible with it. There's nothing wrong with national pride. There's nothing wrong with being a nationalist. The problem is that when you get too big of a head and you start thinking that it's okay to start exterminating people that you don't like, it's like, well, there's this other group of nationalists over here called Americans, and we're going to come over there and stomp you to death. Because you people get so brutal, and you kill so many people. It's like, we're just not going to allow you to do that. We are not going to allow you to do that, Angela Merkel. Why are you doing this? You know, like well, obviously you don't know, and that's the baffling part. It's like, how do you not see what's about to happen to you? We're going to come over there and kick your ass again. You look at what's going on in France. No, that's you know what? Let me stop for a second. Let me just say this. This is actually how I wanted to start off. There's a tendency for people to look around and think gloom and doom, right? To think that the whole world has gone crazy because it looks like it has, right? If you're on Twitter, Twitter is a fire hose of bad news, right? Social media, by the way, I'm very close to going on a social media fast, right? For like a month, because it even gets to me. I get to the point where it's like, man, I feel depressed in my body. Why do I feel depressed? I'm happy. Like, I mean, I need to work out and drink more water and whatever. And I'm tired because I've got new babies. By the way, the etymology of the word baby, like, who invented that word? Like, surely, like, in the very beginning, somebody should have looked at the tiny little human and instead of coming up with the word baby, they should have came up with sleep larcenist. That would have been more appropriate. That's what babies are. They're little sleep thieves. Come to steal your sleep. I am exhausted. But it's not that, right? Like, I start feeling a little down, right? A little sad, a little angry, a little whatever it is you want to call it. It's depression. It's just, you know, it's different forms of depression. I get feeling this way because I look at what's going on, just like you, and it's like, you know, I look at Twitter, I look at Facebook, I open up YouTube channels, and, you know, I just get hit with all of this bad information that it makes it look like the world is in a very bad place internally, like all the people are bad, right? But I can listen. You have to do everything that you can in your own life to make sure that you keep in focus that is not true. There are good people everywhere, particularly in the United States, particularly in the Western world. There's good people everywhere, right? Like Aaron and Nellie, they're in Washington. Like, they were talking, Washington is a really cool place, a beautiful place, full of hardworking, good people. It's just this one city of theirs, you know what I mean? They got this one city that's, Bill Gates came along and there's Microsoft, and all of a sudden you've got, Amazon's there now, and Boeing used to be there, but they're moving. It's a very liberal place, but the rest of Washington's full of good people. Oregon is full of hardworking, good Christian people. America is full of those people. You're one of those people. Like, the fact that you are tuning into this show right now is like, in my opinion, it's like, I mean, unless you're like somebody who's just listening just so you can hate on me. But for the most part, I know most of you people. You know what I mean? Like, we've talked on Telegram, we've talked, you know what I mean? Like, I know most of you people. You're good people. And there's more of you. And if you start feeling isolated, like if you start feeling like, oh man, they're coming to get me, it's like, no, calm down. The world's full of good people. You are surrounded by good people who are thinking the exact same thing as you. It's just these loudmouths, right? They are the squeaky wheel. It's like that old American saying, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? The people who scream "Ree" when the president gets inaugurated. Okay, well, that person gets to be on TV because they're making a spectacle out of themselves. They get to have memes made out of them because they're making a spectacle. You know what I mean? And because of that, it can begin to appear that the whole world is like that. I can assure you it is not. Somebody was just saying, I can't remember, I think it was Ben Shapiro's show last night. Which, by the way, dude, the Ben Shapiro show for December 2nd, that's a must watch. December 2nd, 2018, you must watch that episode. And I think that they were saying, like, look, the new religion of the left, the zealots of the left, they only represent about 2.5% of the population, and the zealots that are on the right, which I don't know. I don't know who those people are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know if you call them people on the right, but like neo-Nazis and whatever. It's like, look, it's maybe 2.5% of the population, if that. There's not that many of them. Most 95% of Americans are at work today minding their own damn business. Trying to make a little dough, trying to feed their family, pay for writing lessons or guitar lessons or whatever it is that they're paying for. That's most people. You must know that. You must know that. Like, if you're feeling like the way I feel sometimes, like when you get caught up in it, go outside and meet some new people, and you'll see. Just go meet people. Go to the store, say hello, be courteous to people, and conversations will start up. And then you realize, like, oh no, the world's full of actually really cool people. It's full of it, right? It's just a small percentage of knuckleheads, which a lot of times those people make their way into politics. That's the explanation that I've come up with right now. Is like, you look at what's happening in France right now, right? Now, I spent a lot of time bagging on France, right? I don't like France. I mean, I take that back. There's a lot of things about France that I don't like. And if somebody were to say, hey man, I've got $5,000 burning in my pocket, I'm gonna go check out one nation, and I want to eat good food, and I want to see pretty buildings, and I want to see pretty landscapes, like, where would you recommend? Like, France would not be on that list. Because the people are... I have very good friends that are French, and there's been a lot of French people that have been very cool to me. But, like, man, they're an arrogant people. And I don't know where they get their arrogance from, because it's like, dude, every time Germany comes into your land and says, hey, we're here to take over, like, you just wave the white flag, and now you've done it again. For the third time. For the third time, you've given up your sovereignty to the Germans. Again. Like, stop surrendering. And it's weird, because I'm about to say some really nice things about the French. The French are always down to riot, right? The French people, the French men, despite the fact that they have this weird love affair with surrender, they're very prone to start a riot if they feel like they're being molested in any sort of way by their government. They are down to riot, and they are down to chop heads off of their leaders. Is it Louis XIV got the guillotine? Like, the French people are down for beheadings, like public execution of their politicians. And if I were Emmanuel Macron right now with his 95-year-old wife, I would be thinking like, okay, all right, I think I need to address the public and kiss every single one of their asses, because these people are about to drag me out into the street and remove my head from my body. Like, that's literally... They literally, if you have not seen this, the people that are like doing the rioting, they literally set up a guillotine, a functional guillotine, in front of like one of their big like government buildings. Like, yes, it's symbolic, and yes, like the people who put it up understood, like, yeah, we're not actually going to kill anybody. But we're just here to let you know, like, this is how close we are to getting to that point. You have pushed us to this point where we're going to build and install a functioning guillotine. Just to remind you people, like we, the French people, are down for chopping heads off of politicians. That's happening right now in France. You don't think these are strange times? Right? Like, because there's people, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, oh, it's not really all that weird. Oh, Germany's not taking over the Europe again. Like, oh no, there's not another war about to start, another world war centered around Germany. You're just being a conspiracy theorist. It's like, dude, Germany has a history of this. It's in their blood to do this. And we know that because of what we call precedent. They've done it twice already, and now they've done it a third time. However, this third time that they've taken over Europe, sure, it's different. Very much different. A very different tactic. It's not the rise of the Third Reich or anything like that, but I mean, can you not see how somebody could look at that and think to themselves, like, well, it kind of looks like Germany just took over Europe again. It looks like Germany just conquered Europe again for the third time in 100 years. Now, 100 years is not a long time, people. That's one lifetime. That's the span of the life of one healthy person, probably a woman. Right? These people that you see on the news that are like, oh, this person's 116 years old. Yeah, it's a woman. Right? Because women live longer than men. But you know what I'm saying. It's like 100 years. It's not that long. There is a person alive, and I think it's only one person. There is a person alive right now who was alive for all three of the European takeovers by Germany. So not that long. You are sharing space and time with that person. So obviously, yeah, it sounds like a lot of years, but it's like, well, the person's still alive, and you have something in common with them. You are alive right now as well. You are both alive right now. Right? So, if I were the devil, right? Because that's the thing, is that whatever happens, like, you have to look at the spiritual nature of this. I was reaching out to this one professor of political science who frequents the Tucker Carlson show. I was inviting him to be on. I don't know if he's going to do it or not, but like I was telling him, he's like, well, what's your show about? I'm like, well, it's about taking a pragmatic look, a pragmatic look at the spiritual nature of these times that we're living in right now, because it's important. Because it's always important. You have to look at, like, if you ever want to do a study of why the German people, not just the government, right? Not just Adolf Hitler taking over the politics of Germany, but the people went along with it. You want to learn how that happened, then there is no getting around it, you must read everything that Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote. Because he was there, he was watching it happen himself, and he wrote down his thoughts. He wrote down what he saw. He wrote down how he felt about it, how it affected him, and what he thought the solution was. And you know what I mean? Like, you have to read that if you want to know. There's a tendency, and this is one thing that I probably haven't spent enough time, like, making it clear, like, this is what I'm trying to drive home into your mind, is that, there's a tendency in all of us, I have it too, is to think to yourself, like, well, those were the olden days. Back then there was no colors, everything was black and white. Obviously, since that, when we watch the footage of it, it's all in black and white. God had not yet invented colors. It's like, no, those were real people. And it happened not very long ago. It happened in the lifetime of people who are still alive today. Not that long ago. And that level of malevolence and evil, there's a tendency for all of us to believe that evil has been driven out of the heart of man. And one of the ways that we've done that to ourselves is we have tried as best as we could to take away that word, the existence of evil, right? We've tried to take that word out of our language. Like, oh, there's no such thing as evil. That's what the leftists say. That's what the postmodernists say. There's no such thing as evil. No such thing as evil, man. That's just some Christian religious person's way of explaining things that they don't like. Okay, well, in communist China, recently, right? Right now, China is not officially communist, but like they're communists, and it wasn't that long ago that they were pretty blatant about it. In communist China, one of the things that happened on a pretty regular basis was when they would go round up Chinese citizens to either execute them or send them off to work camps, right? Send them off to concentration camps so that they can work for the state and be slaves, be beaten and tortured. One of the things that they would do is first they wanted to remove women from the equation because women are not as physically strong as men, so they cannot produce as much work as a man could do, so they were of less value. So they would remove them. And they would go into homes and they would execute little baby girls, babies. Right? You gonna sit there and tell me there's no such thing as evil? Put yourself behind the buttstock of that rifle. Put your finger on that trigger and look at the baby through the scope of that rifle and tell me what's in your heart. Tell me what it takes. What has to be in your heart for you to pull that trigger? Yeah, you tell me there's no evil. But it gets even worse. One thing that a great many of the Chinese soldiers, who were actual people, they were actual living human beings. These men would take that rifle and they would hand it to the mother, and just for kicks, they would tell her that if she did not execute her baby, that they would kill her on the spot. And many of those women, in an attempt to preserve their own life, they did it. They executed their own offspring. And oh boy, the Chinese soldiers would laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. That was recent. That was happening just recently, people. You want to tell me there's no such thing as evil because we have driven it out of the heart of man? Now maybe you're still sitting there thinking, oh, but Pete, that was a long time ago. No, it wasn't. That was in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. That was recent. Recent. And there are many, many, many accounts of that happening. Tell me there's no such thing as evil. I'll tell you what, man, this is one thing I was thinking about earlier. And I get in trouble for saying things like this, but I say it this way for a specific reason. Ready? Here it goes. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't. You don't have to be a Christian. If you don't want to be a Christian, don't be a Christian. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You want to be an atheist? Go be an atheist. You want to go join Scientology? You go ahead. You go right on ahead. You don't have to be a Christian. Don't be. Don't be. I don't care. I'm not responsible for the condition of your soul. If you don't want to be a Christian, then I strongly recommend that you not be a Christian. Don't be one. But if you do want to be a Christian, you're going to need to make a stand because there is a cold front coming. And you better know who you are. And the only way to find that is the only way to know who you are is to hear your name spoken by your Father. Have you heard him calling your name? You need to know. If you're going to be a Christian, you better understand there is evil. There is a God. His Son is Jesus Christ, and he is the Prince of Peace, and he has paid for all of this with his own blood. You better get an understanding of that because there is some nasty stuff coming. Why did I just talk about that? Germans killed over 50 million people, 6 million Jews and another 6 million other people in concentration camps, but the final tally was like 50 million. And then, Russia comes along. They turn into communists like immediately after, and they kill over 100 million people, plus the Chinese communism. 100 million people starving to death, being tortured to death, making mothers execute their own child. Oh, I forgot to finish that story. And after the mother had finished executing her own baby, then the Chinese soldiers would rape that woman and then execute her. And laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. You think that that's been driven out of the heart of man? Let me ask you something. When you see these fat, gelatinous, purple and green-haired dudes and women in Portland harassing an old man in his car because the Portland mayor told the police to stand down and allow Antifa, a terrorist organization, to have the powers of the police. Do you think for a minute that if those people that you saw in those video clips yelling at old people in their car, old people in wheelchairs, you think for a second that if the government came to them and said, listen, it is now legal for you to execute people that you deem as being dangerous, subversive, or Nazi, or whatever it is that you want to call them, as long as you decide that those people are bad for our socialist agenda, you go ahead and you execute them. Do you think for a second that person would be like, oh no, killing is wrong. Killing people is wrong. I am a moral person. I'm an anti-fascist. Obviously, I'm a good person. I'm not going to kill people. You think that for a second? You're wrong. That nature to torture other people and murder other people, including children, that is in those people's heart. And you better be ready. You better know who your friends are, and you better be armed. By the way, I meant to say, I need to write to one of those companies. You know those things that you can buy that you can produce your own bullets? You can make your own bullets. You just have to buy the gunpowder and the bullets and the casings and all that stuff. I strongly recommend, if you don't have one of those, you need to buy one of those, because if the proverbial poop hits the fan, bullets will be the new currency, right? You know how bad you wanted cryptocurrencies to take off for you? Well, listen, if it all goes down, bullets will be the currency. Think about it, maybe I'll do that on another show, is take the time to explain, economically, what I mean by that. If you can't see that, go on to archadvocate.com, write me an email, let me know. I'll do a whole show on it. I'll do an entire show on why bullets would literally be the highest form of currency, more than gold, right? If there's a shortage on bullets, right, and the dollar depresses because civil war breaks out or whatever it is, bullets are currency. And the person who has the equipment to produce them is going to be the richest man in town, right? But anyways, getting back to it, you have to look at everything and think how does this keep happening? How is it these people, these Antifa people, in Portland and whatnot, how do they not know, you are going to be the German, you're going to be the George Soros guys who turns in your fellow Jews to the Reich just so that you can survive. And you're going to be the one torturing the Jew and the Christian and the black guy and the homosexual and whoever it is that you believe are all the bad people. You're going to be the one torturing them, and you're going to like it. Don't you understand? You're going to be the Chinese guy telling the mother, if you want to live, you need to take this gun and execute your baby in front of us. You're going to be that person. How do they not make that connection? Right? How is it that we've gotten to this certain place? How is it that we've gotten to this place where our young people have completely forgotten history, have no idea about how our government works, what the Constitution, what's in it, and what it means? Like, how have we gotten here? How have we gotten to a place where the majority of people under the age of 22 can tell you, who won the biggest prize at the VMAs, but couldn't tell you who the Speaker of the House is? How have we gotten to this place? I'm going to read this thing to you, If I Were the Devil, by Paul Harvey. This is, by the way, this is 1965, people, that this was written. 1965, so 7 years before I was born. This is before we went to the moon. This is before the internet was invented. This is before Roe versus Wade, right? This would have been right before civil rights, the Civil Rights Act. This is before September 11th. It's before everything that most of you have had to live through, right? So just try to keep that in mind, that from this perspective, when this guy wrote this, he couldn't see legalized abortion, homosexual marriage, transvestite people grooming our own children with the blessing of the state in their schools. He couldn't see any of that stuff. He was just writing from the perspective of 1965. And I read, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I would, of course, want to engulf the whole earth in darkness. I would have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population. But I would not be happy until I seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I should set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I would begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. Do as you please to the young, I would whisper. The Bible, it's a myth. I would convince them that a man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what is bad is good, and what is good is, square. In the ears of the young married people, I would whisper that the work is debasing, that cocktail parties are good for you. I would caution them not to be extreme in religion, in patriotism, in moral conduct. And the old, I would teach to pray. I would teach them to say after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. If I were the devil, I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting, so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. And then if I were the devil, I'd get organized. I'd infiltrate unions and urge more loafing and less work, because idle hands usually works out good for me. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction, and I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects but neglect to discipline emotions. Let those run wild, I would say. I would designate an atheist to front for me before the highest courts in the land, and I would get preachers to say, she's right. With flattery and promises of power, I could get the courts to rule whatever I construe as against God and in favor of pornography, and thus I would evict God from the courthouse, and then from the schoolhouse, and then from the Congress, and then in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion. And I would deify science, because that way men would become smart enough to create super weapons, but not wise enough to control them. If I were Satan, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg, and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. And if I were the devil, I would take from those who have, and I would give it to those who wanted, until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And then my police state would force everybody back to work. Then I could separate families, putting children in uniform, putting women in coal mines, and objectors in slave camps. In other words, if I were Satan, I would just keep doing what I'm doing. It was a speech broadcast by ABC Radio by Paul Harvey on April 3rd, 1965. Now, I just really quick, I didn't really mean to speak on this, but you know how I like to riff. I spent a couple episodes talking about Jordan B. Peterson, and like I'm quick to admit when I'm wrong, but it doesn't mean that I like it. Right? I don't like admitting that I'm wrong any more than the next guy. I would suppose it's just I've learned the value of it, right? Again, I think Jordan Peterson's work is good, right? I think that he's a creative type. He's lived in his own sense of creativity. He's done a lot of good work. I still recommend buying his book and reading it and practicing it. But one thing in this thing by Paul Harvey is he's talking about, listen, psychology is the new religion, right? And that's what Jordan B. Peterson is peddling. He's sort of becoming the deity in the new religion. The deity is psychology, and he is the high priest of it. Right? Now again, listen, I keep going back to Tony Robbins. I think Tony Robbins' work is great, right? I think that like what he teaches people, he's teaching people like, look, you need a schedule. You have to set goals and then accomplish them. And you need a schedule, and like this is how successful people do it. It's very simple. The work is hard, but the methodology is very simple. Write out your goals, write them down, and have a schedule, right? Like don't just write them down that you want things or you want to accomplish things, but have it scheduled, like write it in. And at the same time, like, you know, Tony Robbins is a godless heathen, right? Who's, you know, practices hedonism. And, you know, so I don't recommend that, but I do recommend like the aspect of like setting goals. That's actually biblical. He's just taken something that's very biblical. The Jews have been practicing it for thousands of years and they're very successful at it. Like but at the same time, like he himself, like I would never allow Tony Robbins around my children, even if I was present, right? I'm not saying he's a pedophile or anything. I'm just saying like he works for the other guy, right? I work for Jesus. He works for the other guy. When it comes to Jordan Peterson, it's like, look, the guy's got some on-point teachings. He's got some very brilliant things to say, and at the same time, it's like, he's the new religion. He represents the new religion. And if you want to go follow that religion, then go follow it. If you don't want to be a Christian, then don't be a Christian. You don't have to be. You don't have to be a Christian. If it's too much for you to bear, if it's too boring, all I do is I go to church on Sundays and I sit there for an hour and a half and I'm bored out of my skull. I don't want to do this anymore. Then don't. Leave. You walk away from Christianity if that's you. Right? You don't have to be a Christian. But if you do believe that there is an almighty God who loves his children and speaks to his children, whether or not you're actually able to listen right now or not, but you're holding on to that thread of faith, like I know, like it has to be possible, because if God spoke to Moses, and if God spoke to Elijah, and if God spoke to Jesus, and if God spoke to Paul, and if God spoke to all these other people, then surely he wants to speak to me. And apparently he's gone through a great deal of trouble to arrange this conversation. He had to come down here in human form and be horrifically tortured to death by his own creation Like a great deal of work has gone into the event of you talking with God and hearing him. And by talking, I mean listening. Right? The best conversations that you're going to have with God is going to be one-sided. It's where he's talking and you sit there with your mouth shut just trying to absorb as much of it as you can because it's wonderful. And if that's what you believe, that that's possible, that that's what is on the table for you, then you go all in on your Christianity. You go all in. And don't let people like say don't let these atheists who know nothing and they believe nothing. Don't let them come to you and go, oh, what are you, Christian? Oh, you were looking at the Crusades. Don't let them tell them, like, dude, shut up. You want to be an atheist, that's your life. You go over there and F off and you go live your life. And if you've got people that are in your church or in your Christian circles that are always trying to like shame you into doing stuff and you know, trying to make it seem like you need to work harder for God's favor, and if you just do the right thing, then God will give you a bunch of money. If you just do the right thing, then God will heal your sick kid. If you just do the right thing, then God will, you know, make it so that your wife isn't barren anymore and you can have some kids. Because that's literally going on in the church right now in America and in other places. You need to get away from those people. Those people do not represent the father of truth. They represent the father of lies. Those are lies, and it's sickened the church. Right? Get away from those people, and you go seek Jesus Christ if you're going to be a Christian. Because if you are going to be a Christian, then you already know that I have to be a Christian. I have to follow Jesus Christ. I have to accept this salvation. I'm useless without it. I have to live in the kingdom of God now because this life, it's too much for me. I need God. I need God's guidance and help and provision and strength. Like I'm not strong enough for this world. If you don't want to be a Christian, then go away. But if you're on the other end of that, if you're like me, then you have to. I follow Jesus Christ because I must. I was just talking to a pastor yesterday. Well, I say talking, we had a translator. I go to this little church, I read to the kids on Saturday in English for their little English classes. And then on Sunday is the service. And I was telling the pastor, it's like, hey, let's do some YouTube videos for this church and try to get it out into the world and let people know, like, you need money, right? Because they've got maybe 30 congregants, and then they have like 35 teenagers. And the teenagers are not related to the congregants. Like, the congregants are all like old people. But these teenagers come around because we're teaching them English, and we're hanging out and whatever. And they need money. And there is no money in Albania, right? So I was telling them, like, look, let's just put together a little, we'll build like a little GoFundMe or whatever, right? Try to raise some money for you. And I was talking to these people, and I was telling them, I was like, yeah, like sometimes I wish, because Christianity is hard, right? Christianity means like when you screw up, when you get into, a pride fest with your wife or with your husband or with your boss or whatever, or when when you're thinking about fudging the numbers on your taxes or whatever it is that you're doing, that's something that you have to bring to God and be like, God, I'm still a flawed human being. Like, look at what I'm doing. Look at this stupid thing that I'm doing. I'm hurting people and I'm hurting myself, whatever. Like, you have to, like, that's what Christianity is, brother. And it's hard. You have to take that to the cross. You have to take that to the cross and look at Jesus with the skin pulled off of his body and his beard pulled out of his face and the spear stuck into his heart. And you have to look at that and see that it's my sin that did that. I did that. That's not an easy thing to do. And sometimes I wish, like, man, I wish I had the luxury of being an atheist, right? I wish I could just say, oh, there is no God. I'm just going to do whatever I want with my life. Do as thou wilt. Right? That old satanic saying, do what you want. Like sometimes I wish I had the luxury of that, but I don't. I've seen too much. I've seen too much. I've seen God work too many times. I've heard God's voice too many times. I have what's called the burden of knowledge. I must be a Christian. And if that's who you are, right? If you're going to be a Christian, then do it because you must. And if you don't want to be a Christian, like if if you're one of these, because we're hearing like, there's all these articles now, like, oh, I left the church because God wouldn't give me a baby. There was that recent article. All the other Christians kept saying like, oh, you have to fast and you have to pray and you have to give more money and you have to like all these little manipulative things. And finally they're like, okay, forget it, I'm an atheist. It's like, fine, bye. Right? You never knew Jesus, you never knew him. Because if those lies worked on you, like then you weren't protected, you were never protected by the truth. You know what I mean? Yes, I feel bad for those people. I do. Like I feel, but like when I read that story of that worship leader lady and her husband who were like, hey, we're atheists now. We're just not going to be Christians anymore, and we're not going to go to church anymore because God wouldn't give us a baby, and obviously there is no God, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I mean, there is a part of me that looks at that and says, man, that's sad. That's sad that, like, you never knew. You never knew Jesus. Like, if you came to that conclusion, then you never knew. You were always looking for the hierarchy to be your Christianity for you. You were always looking for that building that you attend on Sundays to be the proxy of your Christianity. You thought that going to church made you a Christian. You thought that singing the songs and reading the verses and sneezing out in Jesus' name, amen, at the end of all of your prayers, you thought that that's what made you a Christian. No, it doesn't. Standing in the fire is what makes you a Christian. John the Baptist said it. No, he said, no, I'm not the Messiah. Because remember that? They came to John the Baptist and they're like, are you him? Are you the Messiah? He's like, no, I'm not the Messiah, but checks his watch. He's coming. He's going to be here any minute. And when he gets here, he's going to burn. Right? He says he's got the way it's written, it says he has his winnowing fan in his hand. What a winnowing fan is a fan that you use to stoke a fire, right? And what he was saying was like Jesus is going to come and he's going to bring his fire, and it's going to burn out all the things in us that have no eternal value, that don't have any value. And once this burning is done with, the only thing left is going to be the valuable stuff, the eternal stuff. You want to know what it means to walk with Jesus? It means to walk in the fire of the Lord. And it's hot and very uncomfortable most times. It's never that warm summer breeze. It's like a burning, sometimes it's awful. Because you know, like, again, it's like you got to go to the cross, man, and it's uncomfortable there. It's uncomfortable at the cross. That's why only one of the disciples went. It was John the Beloved. John the Beloved was the only one who went to the cross for the crucifixion. He was the only one at the main event of the 12. And guess what? Right? Of the 12 disciples, one was John the Beloved, the other was Judas, and then there was the other 10. Guess what happened to all 10 of those guys who didn't have the balls to show up to the crucifixion? And they were all successful. I mean, they all wrote, books that changed our lives. But they were all killed for their faith. They all, you know what I mean? Peter was crucified upside down. I think Matthew was torn in 4 pieces. Like, I mean, they all died horrible, torturous deaths. All except for John the Beloved. And of course Judas, because he killed himself. Right? And that little factoid is like, hey, look, man, like if you're going to follow Jesus, like, you don't have to come to the cross now, but you do have to come to the cross. You don't have to do it right now. Matter of fact, you don't even have to come to the cross. If you refuse to come if you want to be a Christian, but you refuse to come to the cross, I will bring the cross to you. Because one way or another, you're going to come to the cross. And John, who wrote Revelations on the island of Patmos, he was the only one who died of natural causes. Is it just a coincidence? Maybe, but I don't know. God's kind of funny with coincidences. He was the only one who was there while Jesus was being tortured to death and hung on that tree. And he was the only one who lived out his full life. You have to come to the cross. If you're going to be a Christian, then you have to be a Christian. And if you don't want to be a Christian, then leave. I've always thought there were too many Christians. Like Jesus said, like there's a way that leads to life, and very few people will find it. Very few people will find it, is what Jesus said. And I look around in America, and it's like, well, there's almost everybody is a Christian. This isn't very few. This is the very many. I've always thought there were too many Christians. Right? You people need to leave. Like, if you don't want to be a Christian, then beat it. Beat it. You hear that? Is that Roscoe out there again? If you don't want to be a Christian, don't be. But if you do, then you must. Because there is some evil at work right now. Just recently, like there's yet another. There's these people in China that the Chinese people went and they took them over and they put them in torture camps. That's happening right now. You think that like this condition of man has been removed from the, like it's not been removed. It's still happening today. It's not, there is still evil in the earth. It's just as bad as it's always been. There are still concentration camps in China where they torture people to death and starve people to death because they are not politically convenient. There are camps in North Korea where people are starving to death right this very minute. They are real live people. Just put yourself in their shoes for just a minute. Just imagine what it would be like to go 5 days without eating anything, and then somebody brings you a plate full of maggot-filled bread, and that's your meal for the week. That's what's going down right now. In China right now, one of their major national problems is that there is a group of people, a very large group of people, who kidnap people and murder them for the purpose of harvesting their organs to sell on the black market. That's happening right now. Oh, there's no such thing as evil. Beware of those people. Anybody who comes to you and says, oh, listen, man, Nietzsche said it, God is dead. There's no such thing as evil. That's just an old Christian thing. Get away from those people. Those are the people who will torture you and murder you. Stay away from those people. They're bad. Oh, there's no evil. There's people being murdered right now because they're white and they have a farm in South Africa. South Africa is about to go through a horrific change. And people are going to starve to death. Only this time we're going to be able to see it on Twitter for the first time. There's some very crazy things coming down the pike. It's already begun. It's not like this isn't coming, folks. It's already begun. And I don't want you to feel like stressed out or depressed or whatever. It's like, no, be glad. Be glad that right now you're listening to this and you can see it coming and you can prepare yourself for it. Prepare yourself mentally. Get yourself resourced. Make sure you have some water in your basement, right? Make sure you have a method of producing bullets. Make sure you have weaponry to fire said bullets. Make sure you have enough bullets that you can trade with other people for other things. Right? Just be prepared. It's like that old, the Boy Scout thing. Be prepared. That's the number one rule. Just be prepared. Just about everything else gets taken care of after that. And understand that there's evil in the world and that it comes to a cosmic head somewhere, if you will, and that head is called Satan. The adversary. Your enemy. That's what the word Satan means, the adversary. Adversary. And although I cannot, I lack the words to truly conceptualize like what I believe that is, let me just say it like this. It's a person of some sort who has a great deal of power. Good news is, though, is that his power is lies, and lies are easy to spot because lies are weakness. That's why you shouldn't lie, man, because, like, when you tell a lie, it's like you have to keep, you know what I mean? Like, it never stops until you come out with the truth. Like, you can't, the problem with lying is that it's weak. It's like global warming. Oh, I'm sorry, climate change. Or is it global cooling? Or whatever it is that they're calling it. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know that the climate change things is a complete, it's not a hoax, it's a lie. It's a lie. And you want to know how you know it? Because they can't even keep the name of it straight. They keep changing their story, and that's the easiest way to tell if something is a lie or not. Like, if you have children, like when your kids lie, it's like, it's you know, like, remember when you were a little kid and your mom would catch you lying? You'd be like, how does she know? Well, it's simple, actually, because she was sitting there watching you change your story mid-sentence. It's like, all right, this is bullshit. This kid's lying to me. That's who Satan is. He's the father of lies, and lies are weak. None of them are good. Oh, the earth is going to burn up because of global warming. I mean, climate change. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, you can't even keep the name of it straight. And your only solution to it? So the world's going to burn up because we're making too much of a mess out of the air. Okay. I'm not a big fan of pollution either. But what's your solution? Oh, we're going to tax you more. Wait a minute. You're telling me that if I just give you money, more of my money, then the crisis of the planet will be averted? Well, no. I mean, we're gonna take your money, and then we're going to pay scientists to figure out how to fix this problem. And well, wouldn't it be simpler if we just stopped polluting? Why don't you just, if you want to raise the tax on gasoline, why don't you, instead of taking my money, why don't you just reduce the amount of gasoline that can be purchased? Oh, well, we can't do that because then our economy would stop. Oh, so it's about money. The reason why your solution to global warming every single time is more money. More. You can't keep the name of it straight. Your only solution is I got to pay more money to you in taxes? When you fly around the world on private jets so that you can preach this gospel of global warming or climate change or whatever it is. Al Gore has he has a home that uses 27 times more energy than the average U.S. household, and that's just one of his homes. Lies, they're weak. And they work on weak people. And there's a lot of weak people out there. Don't be one of them. Be strong. And stay in community and support the Arch Advocate Show by going to archadvocate.com, becoming a monthly patron, or if you want to do PayPal, that works as well too. I need a microphone, people, and I need a microphone cord, and I need a green screen for the YouTube show. I would appreciate all that, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.